most of the winter, my father would be in the hospital. And so I had to learn to practice signing his name. So I wrote checks and I signed not only my report cards, but my brothers and sisters.
So you were a young criminal.
I got early training. Only to discover later on, the banker said, I don't know why you signed his name. You could sign your own. He had it set up so his kids could carry on the business. So we had this old-fashioned school teacher who, an interesting little incident, she used to always had a pointer with her. And if somebody misbehaved too bad, she might like to try to whip them with that pointer. Well, I sat right behind a kid who was pretty ingenious and tough. And he would always provoke her to try to whip him with that pointer. He would invariably get the pointer away from her and threaten to whip her. And we had to, then, if anybody helped or associated with him, we would be sent to go see the superintendent for proper discipline. Well, turns out the superintendent was a good friend of my father's. And at the time, my father was president of the school board. So he had a little say in the overall situation too. So I didn't necessarily tell him the total truth. We did a lot of hunting deer when we wanted some speedy beef to eat. We'd simply go out, take the car and go out, we saved an old car. Instead of sending it to the junkyard, that was our hunting car. We cut the roof off and we could take our gun and go out and shoot a deer.
So you had a mobile stand.
On our own farm. But then to make it more fun, we would, in the late summer, when the game wardens would come out, we would get them to chase us. And of course, we wouldn't have a gun with us. But we had the car fixed so that we could make it backfire and it would sound like a gun. Then we'd get the game wardens to chase us. Well, they didn't know the roads like we did, because we practiced it. And they'd wind up getting stuck, or in some cases hit small trees, damage their own vehicles. But we would always go back to pull. We'd offer to pull them out. If they'd give us, $5 or $10, we'd pull them out with the tractor. The big farm tractors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after they'd get over being mad and realize we'd always have to start walking away, because we never wanted them to know the car that we were in, that they were chasing. So we would walk back and we'd hid the car and we'd take a tractor back. But we would have to walk. They wouldn't necessarily offer to pay us. So we'd start walking away, and when we get far enough away, they'd holler at us, okay, we'll pay. And back then it didn't cost much for a case of beer. So we would always try to find somebody. Well, there was a local guy who was over 21, and he'd always buy us a case of beer. We'd have to pay him an extra $1 or $2. But it was game warden's money anyway. Lee and I were hunting. This is my older brother. And we were legal. We had, well, back then in Michigan, you had to put your license on the back of your jacket, so it was visible. And the game wardens would, every time we would go out hunting, they would just try to stick right tight to us. And this time they sent a helicopter to check us out. So as they circled around with the helicopter, we kept staring up at it. So when they would be going in a circle, we would just turn to keep our back away from them so they could not see if we had a license. And the field it was a cornfield that had been harvested, and it rained so much it was so muddy. And we had to walk in quite a ways from where we parked a car because it was too muddy to go in. And finally, they got tired of us turning, so they couldn't see our back, so the helicopter landed, and they didn't know it was so muddy. Well, then we turned our back and showed them our license and walked away. And they got stuck in the mud.
Any specific examples of some hijinks that you got into in college?
Yeah, we had a group of about 6 of us, and I had the old car. It wasn't very valuable. I bought it from my older brother. It barely got me around. So we got a couple of cases of beer, and it was on a weekend. That's when the campus cop was always active. He tried to catch anybody who may have had any beer or threat of a party. And so everybody would play him for kind of a fool. So what we did is we had it planned. So I was driving my car down the street, and at this one corner at a certain time, it was all had to be coordinated very carefully. Somebody had I don't remember exactly what it was, but as I drove very slowly past, I didn't stop at the stop sign, and this other kid who was involved took some kind of a utensil and really banged into my car so it'd be loud enough so the cop would hear. Somebody else had to catch it, or the red dye, and somebody else laid down on the ground like he'd been hit, and they sprayed him with this red dye. The cop came running. He thought he was dying, so he called the Grand Rapids City Police. They came, the sirens came, the ambulances came, but when the cop went away to call them, we all got up and left. And we had a little party, and we joined in watching what was going on, their big investigation. That was about the only incident there. It just shows that we had to make our own fun.